close your eyes, take a deep, slow breath, and let the busy, demanding world of the present day gently fade into the background. Imagine, if you will, standing before a polished metal mirror in a quiet chamber, 700 years ago. The reflection staring back at you does not value the sharp contours, sun-bronzed skin, or perfectly symmetrical, voluminous hair of the modern era. Instead, this mirror reflects an entirely different philosophy of human beauty, one defined by high, expansive foreheads, skin as pale as fresh cream, and quiet, symbolic elegance. Tonight, we are going to embark on an unhurried journey back to the Middle Ages to discover exactly what it meant to be beautiful in a world ruled by knights, castles, and deep spiritual devotion. Whether you are looking to quiet an active mind, ease the tension of a long day, or simply drift into a deep, restful sleep, let the soft, rhythmic details of this forgotten history carry you away into a state of peaceful tranquility. To understand medieval beauty, we must first look at the face, or rather, the lack of hair upon it. In the high and late Middle Ages, particularly between the 12th and 15th centuries, the ultimate focal point of a woman's face was not her eyes or her lips, but her forehead. An expansive, high, and completely smooth forehead was considered the absolute pinnacle of aristocratic beauty, elegance, and high intellect. To achieve this desired look, women engaged in a meticulous, painstaking process of hairline modification. Using small tweezers, or sometimes even harsh chemical mixtures made of quicklime and vinegar, noblewomen would carefully pluck the hairs along their front hairline, moving it back by an inch or more to create a dome-like, perfectly rounded forehead. But the plucking did not stop at the hairline. To ensure that the forehead remained completely uninterrupted and prominent, women also plucked their eyebrows until they were incredibly thin, faint lines, or in many cases, removed them entirely. Eyelashes, too, were often trimmed or plucked away, as prominent lashes were thought to distract from the pure, open, and serene expression of the eyes. This lack of facial hair created an ethereal, almost otherworldly appearance that was highly celebrated in the poetry and literature of the time. When a medieval poet praised his lady, he did not speak of her striking gaze, he wrote of her wide, cloudless forehead, comparing it to smooth marble or a spotless sheet of fine parchment. As we move deeper into this quiet world, let us look at the color of the skin. Today, a sun-kissed glow is often associated with health, leisure, and outdoor recreation. In the medieval world, however, the opposite was true. Darkened or tanned skin was the unmistakable mark of the peasant class, the men and women who had no choice but to toil all day under the burning sun in the open fields. Therefore, the aristocracy prized a complexion of absolute, unblemished paleness. This was not merely a matter of vanity, but a powerful, visual indicator of high social standing and a life of comfortable, indoor leisure. The ideal medieval complexion was frequently described in courtly love poems as lilies and roses, a canvas of pure, milk-white skin touched by a delicate, natural flush of pink in the cheeks. To maintain this prized paleness, wealthy women stayed deep within the cool, stone walls of their castles, or wore wide-brimmed straw hats and protective veils whenever they ventured out into the sunlit gardens. For those who sought to enhance their natural skin tone, the remedies of the time were remarkably gentle, yet deeply methodical. Women would wash their faces with elderflower water, fresh goat's milk, or a distilled broth made from boiled wild lilies. For those who desired a more dramatic effect, however, there were more complex and dangerous cosmetic mixtures. Wealthy ladies sometimes turned to ceruse, a dense, opaque white face paint made by mixing ground lead with vinegar. While it successfully masked any blemishes and created a perfectly smooth, porcelain-like finish, its continuous use slowly poisoned the skin, causing premature aging and health issues over time. Yet, in the quiet candlelight of a medieval manor, the dangerous reality of lead paint was entirely hidden beneath its serene, marble-like glow, representing a quiet sacrifice made in the pursuit of the era's highest aesthetic ideal. Beyond the face, the medieval aesthetic demanded a very specific, carefully constructed body silhouette. Unlike the dramatic, cinched-waist hourglass figures of later centuries, the high medieval period celebrated a long, slender, and remarkably fluid silhouette. For women, the ideal posture was characterized by a slightly curved spine, where the shoulders were sloped gently downward, the chest was kept relatively flat, and the lower abdomen was allowed to curve softly outward. This prominent, rounded belly was not seen as a flaw, rather, it was a highly celebrated symbol of fertility, youth, and potential motherhood, mirroring the rounded bellies of the beautiful, saintly figures depicted in the stained glass windows of grand cathedrals. To achieve this flowing silhouette, women wore a series of layered, heavy garments. The base layer was the chemise, a soft, loose-fitting undergarment made of fine white linen that felt cool against the skin. Over this, they wore the kirtle, a long, close-fitting dress that laced tightly up the sides or front to gently smooth the curves of the upper body without distorting them. Finally, a heavy, luxurious surcoat, often lined with soft rabbit or squirrel fur, was draped over the shoulders, falling in long, graceful folds to the stone floor. When a noblewoman walked, she did not take hurried, energetic steps. Instead, she moved with a slow, gliding gait, her hands lightly resting on her abdomen to gently lift her heavy skirts, creating an impression of effortless, serene movement that seemed to defy the heavy weight of her attire. Let us now turn our attention to the hair, which was regarded as a woman's crowning glory, yet remained one of the most strictly regulated aspects of her appearance. In medieval society, the ultimate color of beauty was gold. Blonde hair, described in romantic texts as spun gold or bright copper wire, was associated with youth, purity, and the radiant light of the angels. Women who were not naturally blessed with golden locks went to extraordinary lengths to lighten their hair using natural, sun-activated recipes. One common method involved boiling a mixture of saffron, crushed onion skins, and yellow willow bark in strong vinegar. Women would thoroughly saturate their hair with this pungent liquid and then sit for hours in a sunny courtyard or on a high castle balcony, allowing the heat of the sun to slowly bake the golden pigments into their strands. However, despite the immense beauty of these long, golden tresses, a mature, married woman was rarely permitted to show her hair in public. Social and religious customs dictated that loose, flowing hair was a sign of girlhood and untapped wildness. Once a woman married, her hair was carefully braided, coiled tightly against her head, and completely covered with a series of linen veils, wimples, or elaborate, structured headdresses. These headpieces, made of crisp, starch-white linen or fine silk, framed the face closely, highlighting the plucked forehead and pale cheeks while keeping the alluring beauty of her hair safely hidden away from the gaze of the outside world, reserved only for the private, candlelit sanctuary of the home. We must also dismantle one of the most common modern misconceptions about the Middle Ages, the myth that people of this era were completely dirty, neglected their hygiene, and cared nothing for their teeth. While they did not possess modern synthetic toothpastes or plastic brushes, medieval citizens cared deeply about fresh breath and clean, white teeth. Rotten or missing teeth were not only painful, but they were also seen as highly unattractive and a sign of poor health. To maintain their dental hygiene, people used natural, aromatic substances to scrub their teeth and soothe their gums. Sages, physicians, and household handbooks recommended rubbing the teeth vigorously with a clean, rough piece of linen cloth after every meal. To enhance this cleaning process, they dipped the cloth in various herbal mixtures. A popular recipe involved mixing finely ground charcoal, dried sage leaves, and coarse sea salt into a fine powder. The abrasive salt and charcoal polished away stains from food and drink, while the sage provided a clean, herbal scent. To combat bad breath, they rinsed their mouths with warm water infused with mint, cinnamon, or rosemary. For the wealthy, exotic spices like cloves and cardamom were imported along the Silk Road and chewed slowly to perfume the breath with a sweet, spicy aroma. In this way, even without the convenience of modern plumbing, the sensory experience of a medieval encounter was filled with the subtle, comforting sense of garden herbs and clean linen. While the aristocracy lived in a world of silk veils, lead cosmetics, and expensive saffron hair dyes, the vast majority of the medieval population consisted of the peasant class. For the young men and women working the land, beauty standards were far more practical, grounded in physical strength, health, and natural vitality. A beautiful peasant woman was not prized for her delicate, fragile paleness, but for her robust health, bright eyes, and the energetic warmth of her smile. At local spring festivals, autumn harvest fairs, and village bonfires, young peasants gathered in their finest, simple linen tunics. Here, beauty was expressed through natural movements, the strength of a man's shoulders as he wrestled in the village square, or the grace and stamina of a woman as she danced in a wide circle around the fire. The cosmetics of the village were sourced directly from the surrounding meadows and hedgerows. Young girls would rub the juice of crushed wild strawberries onto their lips and cheeks to give them a vibrant, natural stain. They washed their hair in rain barrels collected under oak trees, infusing it with chamomile flowers to bring out natural highlights, or rosemary to give it a deep, healthy shine. This was a beauty defined not by the rigid, artificial rules of the royal court, but by a harmonious connection to the cycles of nature, where health, fertility, and a cheerful spirit were the most attractive qualities a person could possess. Whether in the grand, tapestried halls of a stone castle or the humble, earth-floored cottages of a country village, the pursuit of beauty in the medieval era was ultimately a deeply human endeavor. It was a visual language used to communicate status, health, devotion, and a longing for connection. Though the specific trends, the plucked foreheads, the lead-based paints, and the elaborate linen wimples, may seem incredibly strange to us today, the underlying desire to present oneself beautifully to the world remains entirely unchanged across the centuries. As we close this chapter of history and let the soft, whispering voices of the past settle into silence, let yourself find comfort in the timeless continuity of human life. The same stars that shone down on the high stone towers of medieval Europe now gaze quietly down upon you tonight. Feel the comforting weight of your blankets, let your breathing become slow, steady, and deep, and allow your mind to drift away into a state of absolute, uninterrupted rest. If this gentle journey through the quiet corners of history has brought peace to your evening, consider subscribing to the channel, sharing your thoughts in the comments below, or exploring another peaceful narrative. But for now, close your eyes, let go of the day, and sink into a deep, beautiful sleep. Good night.